Hello, it's Tom, and today we're going to be talking about one of the easiest palms you can grow, and it is the Parlor Palm. The Parlor Palm is one of the oldest houseplants grown in our homes, and it's still sold today. It's still popular, people still buy it, they love it. And there's a good reason for that. They are extremely easy. You give them what they want, and they will thrive in our homes. They are adaptable, they are extremely cheap to buy, considering palms generally are quite expensive houseplants. The Parlor Palm is ridiculously cheap in comparison. They grow slowly, which can be annoying and not necessarily what people want, but equally, because they grow so slow, they don't take up a huge amount of space and they don't outgrow wherever you choose to put them for a long time. And because of their easygoing nature, they're just so good to have around. Now, this is a relatively new plant to my collection. However, I have actually grown Parlor Palms for a long period of time. I had one, it was rounding up to maybe 5 or 6 years, and then disaster happened. And I'll tell you later on in this video what happened, and I would never make that mistake again. And I'm going to tell you what to look out for and definitely what to avoid. Let's kick things off by talking about what they need for light. So they ideally want a little bit of sun. Okay, now not anything harsh, nothing too strong, just maybe early morning or late evening is probably the perfect location for them. They don't like too much sun. It can scorch the leaves very easily. And if you recognize this plant, if you've seen it before, you may have seen it in shops and offices. They regularly get scorched and they blanch. The leaves don't look great. So they don't mind a little bit of sun, but only gentle sun basically. So very early in the mornings or late in the evenings. And then the rest of the day, just kind of indirect light. Okay, so that's probably the place I would tell you to put it if you want good growth and you want a healthy plant. But they can also come down that scale as well. So you can go for a lower light location and they still do okay. Now, whether or not you could say they're going to thrive is, of course, debatable. I have grown mine in lower light because of the simplicity of them. And the truth is, they don't grow as fast. They are extremely slow growing at the best of times. And if the light levels are even lower than what they probably want, it's going to grow slower. Now, again, that might not be a problem. You can buy these plants small, very cheap, or you can even get them a little bit bigger and they're still reasonably priced. So you may buy a plant, your Parlor Palm may be a good size already, and you might be quite happy with how it looks. So new growth might not be a priority for you. And if that's the case, lower light levels are absolutely fine. When it comes to watering needs, they're extremely forgiving. They will certainly pull up with underwatering. They're not succulent. They will not cope with that for long periods of time. And of course, you're gonna have a plant that suffers if you regularly don't water it enough. But a couple of days, maybe up to a week of underwatering, they will pull up with it begrudgingly. They will deal with that. The ideal sort of scenario is a moist potting mix. They are used to having their roots kind of moist. That doesn't mean say you need to keep them moist all the time. That's not what I'm saying. And you certainly don't need to keep them wet all the time. Don't do that. But try to aim for them to be a little bit moist and then let them dry out a little bit before you water them again. You can wait just, not too long. As soon as they start to dry out, you can water them again. A good rule of thumb for most houseplants is when the top couple of inches have dried out, it's probably time to water them again. There's still a little bit of moisture left in the pot, in the potting mix. There's still some moisture left when it gets to that point, but it's fine to top it up. If you have a lot of yellowing leaves, it's usually for most houseplants that is a sign of overwatering. But with palms, if they go yellow on a frequent basis, it tends to be underwatering. Okay, so that's something to look out for. And if you're overwatering it, you're looking for a lot of brown edges and the leaves, the fronds. Really, it's not leaves; they are technically called fronds. They go black. That's a sign of slightly overwatering. But overall, it's a forgiving plant, and you shouldn't really have any problems with it. Repotting this house plant is extremely relaxing. I say that because I did it myself about a week or two ago, ready for this video. I did it. It's actually spring right now in the UK. We had a warm day, and I thought I'm just going to quickly repot this plant. And I was outside, and the birds are going. I might even actually insert the clip so you can have a listen. Yeah, it was pretty cool actually. Anyway, so the repotting aspect of it, right? It's quite easy to get right. It's not rocket science. They are just normal plants that will just benefit from being upsized a couple of sizes into the next pot and using just a normal houseplant sort of potting mix. Okay, so for me, I like to use something a little bit open. I used to use really kind of everyday potting sort of soil that you'd get from a garden centre. But I tend to find that there's usually a problem with fungus gnats, or it's just too heavy and it just holds on to too much water. So I stopped using that generally now, and this has been going on for years, and I always have good results. So I've tried it with this one, see what happens. So it's kind of a little bit free draining. There's a couple of bits and pieces in there just to keep it a little bit open, but it's nothing excessive, okay? It's not grit or anything like that. It's just a small amount of perlite in here. Don't know if you can see. You might have seen it in the video. Generally, palms like their root ball to be quite sort of snug. They don't want to be too loose and rocking around. They don't really enjoy that. So the most important thing is when you do repot it, just firm them in. Just make sure everything's quite anchored and it's not too loose and it's going to, rock around too much. As you can probably see, there's no movement. I packed them in. That's what they like. Okay. It doesn't mean to say you need to compress the whole potting mix. What I'm saying is just make sure that the roots and the root ball itself is firm when you're going to repot it. And finally, one last thing I'm going to say is the roots are delicate and they are sensitive. They do not like being manhandled, and they certainly don't like being trimmed. I've seen people saying that you should chop them and all this stuff. Don't do that, okay? Just don't damage the roots. They are extremely sensitive. Their root health is important to them. Don't do this. Do not damage the roots severely. Don't do anything crazy. A little bit of teasing, if the roots are really entangled, perhaps, or they're coming out the holes, fine. You might need to knock them off a little bit or cut a little bit off to get them out of the container. That's fine. Just don't go hacking away at them. They don't enjoy that. It's going to set them back. It just is not a good thing to do. At the start of the video, I said to you, I was going to tell you what happened to my bigger plant. I was really gutted. It was destroyed and completely gone. It was unsalvageable and I had to go. And my problem with it was, drum roll, my arch nemesis is thrips, okay? Now, this was in the early days before I really realized how damaging thrips could be and just how almost insidious they are. They're so small, but the damage they can do is astronomical. They can obliterate plants, and that is kind of disturbing. And they spread, okay? I found that they particularly like certain species of plants, especially aeroids. They seem to be quite a fan of those. And for some reason, also palms. Thrips seem to love these plants, and they're extremely difficult to get rid of. Now, you might be watching this thinking, I don't have thrips, but you might do. If your Parlor Palm starts to look weird and there's no obvious reason why that is, check for thrips. I cannot stress that enough. If you spot them, you need to get rid of them quickly, because if you don't, they will take over and they will obliterate your plant. You're going to lose it. It's going to go. It's not like they just do a little bit of damage and you have to trim it off. They completely destroy the plant, and they spread. They will go through your collection of houseplants, especially if you have more, quite a few around. They will go through them and they will just go. And it's fast. You could be talking a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two, and then they're finished. So my Parlor Palm was destroyed by thrips, and I am still gutted about that. However, I have learned some valuable lessons, including take them seriously and deal with them quickly. If you think that you have a thrip problem, then I will actually link to my article on my website, which gives you a lot more details. It tells you what to look for, the signs, and it shows you some pictures as well, so you can have an idea of the damage they can do. So I will link to that below, just in case you're suspicious or you're concerned that you may have that issue as well. So yeah, thrips are not to be ignored. Humidity isn't really generally a concern. They can put up quite a wide range. They are technically tropical plants, so they do ideally want it quite humid. But if you can't deliver that, they're not going to cry about it, okay? So you don't need to be too worried. Now, if there's a lot of side effects, if you're seeing a lot of problems with them, lots of brown edges, that kind of stuff, just typical kind of things for low humidity, then you're going to have to do something about it. But you know this. If you're growing houseplants and you know that you have a problem with humidity normally in your homes, this isn't going to be anything new. But they will cope better than a lot of houseplants. In terms of feeding, so yes, absolutely. They do like feed. There are actually, I should really point this out, to be honest, this isn't one plant. This is multiple plants. We're probably talking about, there's probably about 10 plants in here. So they cluster them together when they're sold. They're all crammed into a pot, and there's many plants grown together. When that happens, because there's lots of different plants in the same pot, they're going to be competing and fighting for nutrients. So you do need to feed them to sustain them. However, even when I say this, it doesn't mean to say that you should be feeding them copious amounts. They don't need a crazy amount of feed. So I'm talking maybe looking to feed them maybe once every couple of months. Normal houseplant fertilizer off the shelf, very straightforward. And just every couple of months is okay. Some people would like to perhaps feed them a little bit less, especially when they're small as well. They definitely won't need as much feed. And if you're growing them in a low light location, definitely do not overfeed them. You can risk fertilizer burn, and you can disturb the organisms in the roots and the beneficial relationship with the potting mix. Let's quickly cover some interesting things about the Parlor Palm that you might not be aware of, which will bound to come up at some point when you're looking after them. So, are they poisonous? No, they're not poisonous houseplants. So they're good around pets. However, as always, I always say, you probably don't want them near your pets because they can be damaged, especially the delicate sort of the fronds are they're not tough, they can easily be damaged. So you do want to keep your pets away just from damaging the plant, but they're not going to harm people or pets. They actually flower as well. Most palms do not flower indoors ever, but the Parlor Palm does, and it does on a regular basis. What comes out are like yellow seed pods. They are interesting. They look a little bit alien. I get a lot of questions saying, "What are these?" Because they look weird. Do not prune them. They cannot be pruned. It's a palm. Palms have a growth point and it comes up. They're not like normal plants where you can trim them and then it encourages growth somewhere else. It doesn't happen with these. They have a single growth point. If you damage it or you cut it off, that's it. That part of the plant will not grow anymore. So no pruning is permitted. Clearly, if things have died, if you have browning and it doesn't look great, trim them off. That's fine. Okay, so the final thing I really should cover is temperature, I think, and that is to tell you that these are tropical plants. They like it warm. They can probably cope with around about 10 degrees Celsius as the lower level, but they won't grow in that temperature range. You're probably going to need it to be at least 20 degrees and above. I will put the conversion for that is Fahrenheit so you can see. It needs to be above that 20 degrees in order for them to actually grow. And like I said in this video already, they are quite slow growing. And if the temperatures are consistently below that, you're going to get no growth. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so they can cope with a broad range of temperatures. If you actually want them to grow and you want them to thrive in your home and you want something substantial in a couple of years, you're going to have to give them warmer temperatures. So find them a warmer spot in your home and you should have good results. Okay, the main problem I say with these plants is thrips and a watering issue, either underwatering or overwatering, and I've covered all those things in this video already. So I'm going to end here, and I'm going to say to you, if you do have a problem that I've not covered or you want some more tips and stuff, I will do my best to help. Just leave a comment below. I really appreciate you watching this video today, and I hope to see you in the next one.